Let's get this out of the way. If you don't like Eureka, that's okay. If you do like Eureka, that's okay. The content and the people behind it are not above criticism. That being said, there is a diverse array of opinions out there, and my goal is to give a look at both sides, which make good points. Full disclosure, I'm in the camp of really liking this type of content. If you think I'm making this to come out swinging at the opposing side, however, you're gonna be disappointed. I know what it's like to feel completely let down by changes in the game. Monk! So don't blame people for simply expressing their distaste so long as they can defend their point. I have my bias, but I'll be doing what I can to give both sides a fair shot in this overview of Eureka. If I miss anything you believe is significant or want me to touch on other points in a future video, positive or negative, let me know in the comments below. That being said, I'm DrakGamestein, your neighborhood-friendly Square Enix apologist and degenerate Final Fantasy XI fanboy. Eureka's out and people are pissed. Pick your side and let's get into it. If you've spent any number of seconds on the forums, subreddit, or even your local Final Fantasy XIV Discord, you'll have seen this brilliantly articulated phrase at least once or twice. Eureka is just Diadem. Insert random version number. Even though this is a massive and lazily done oversimplification that's been in the works since Eureka was revealed, all those years and years ago, even those who enjoy this content can identify some things that are similar between Eureka and Diadem. They're open world-ish instances. You can't mount right away. You focus on killing mobs. You get area-specific loot from those mobs. You kill weaker mobs to spawn super mobs or fates. You get more area-specific loot from said super mobs. And players are prone to AFK. It's not really part of the instance, but it happened in both, so we'll count it. I may have missed a few finer points, but even so, fair enough. That sure as hell sounds like Diadem to me. But why stop there? While we're thinking about it, every raid is turn 1 of Binding Coil 4.0. You go into an instance, fight a boss, it has mechanics, you kill the boss, you get loot. Every dungeon is just Sastasha 6.0. You mindlessly kill trash mobs, get to bosses, the bosses have mechanics, bosses drop loot, and the instance ends when you beat the last boss. Every crafter is Goldsmith 12.0. You need crafting gear, you use specific materials, you have special crafting actions, and you create items in the end while wondering where all the good procs went now that you're working on a really expensive piece of gear. I mean, why doesn't the material quality give you better procs? It just makes sense. You put in all the effort and or money to increase the base high quality chance, and all of a sudden your chance to proc starts to match your ability to get a successful hasty touch.
Just throw me a bone, game, holy shit!
Oversimplifications aside, most of us know the reality is quite different. Each raid tier, while having a similar formula, has different bosses, mechanics, gimmicks, loot, and strategies. Same for dungeons. Crafters also equally. The point is, things can be similar, but it doesn't mean they're the same. Even when they are the same, a rehash can be done better or worse in a new context, and they need to be looked at critically in that context. In Eureka, you do grind a bunch of mobs, but they give you experience towards an exclusive leveling system that provides a new means of progression through the content. There are elemental advantages and weather variables to be taken into consideration when fighting mobs as well. You're guaranteed the gear at the end of your grind without having to rely solely on RNG to get there. Gear stats are also not determined by RNG like it was in Diadem.
So what you're saying, Drak, is that because it's not exactly the same as Diadem, that makes it good?
No, not at all.
So that means you agree it's bad?
No, not at all. You can always write up a list of criteria that makes a game, or part of one, good or bad and compare them side by side to Eureka. But at the end of the day, it's all subjective. Some people will like Eureka for what it has to offer. Some people will dislike it for the exact same reasons. For me, it's a fantastic love letter to Final Fantasy XI and early gen MMOs, which gives a sense of nostalgia in a modern MMO setting, which, according to Yoshi P in a Famitsu interview, was the intention. Even if I had never played Final Fantasy XI, I would still probably enjoy Eureka because it provides the same gameplay that made me enjoy 11. I might not like it as much given the current style of MMO gaming I've also grown to love, but I'd enjoy it nonetheless for reasons we'll get into in just a second. That is my subjective take on it. Those same reasons, however, are the exact reasons a lot of players don't like Eureka, and their opinions are also justified. This may sound wishy-washy, but trying to argue that you're right or wrong based on how you feel is pointless. How you feel can still be used effectively in a well-thought-out criticism, but when we start trying to pass off the subjective as absolute fact, we do more harm than good in a discussion and end up getting nowhere. Feel free to call me out on it if you catch me doing this as well. I'm not above making those kinds of mistakes, but for now, I'll be doing my best to acknowledge my bias when it comes up so you can judge it accordingly. So then the question comes up, what's the point of this video if I'm not going to make a decisive judgment as to whether Eureka is good or bad? Well, I've taken opinions and viewpoints from people on social media and through streams, which both agree and disagree with me. While I enjoy this content personally, I'm going to try and stay objective and do the unthinkable. let you make up your own mind about it. If you don't like it in the end, that's fine. If this provides a new perspective and you end up enjoying it, awesome. Either way, let me know what you think below and we can have a discussion. Now, without further ado, here is my list of pros and cons in Eureka. Pro: you only really need to grind once. You'll have enough materials by the time you're 20 for multiple weapons if that's all you go for. You'll even be able to finish an armor set or two just fate grinding. The fate needed to take a +2 relic to Animos level only needs to be done once per weapon, as long as you get gold rating. After that, one lockout of grinding fates will give you enough, or near enough, Animus crystals to convert to protein crystals for a new item. After the initial grind, that's 2 to 3 hours for a new weapon compared to 6 to 7 hours of efficient light farming, let's say. I'm not even going into the Atma step pre-nerf. Even considering the initial grind to level 19 to 20 in Eureka, this step still seems to be one of the fastest in terms of completability aside from the original couple relic steps from 2.0, especially in terms of getting multiple weapons. Con: individual mobs don't give enough experience. I do believe the intention was to farm these mobs between fates because of the protein crystal drop rate when in an 8-man group farming individual mobs compared to multiple groups zerging mobs together. It wouldn't be the first time the development team misjudged how the community would handle the content, i.e. turn 2 enrage method, ninja on release, the 3.0 bard rotation, and so on. This has led to players zerging singular portions of the map, slowing down the instance, and being more of a punishment to lower players for not participating in higher level fates, because even though the XP is penalized, it's better than what they'd get through grinding individual mobs. Because of this, higher level players trying to spawn a notorious monster fate feel used because the lower level players aren't contributing, and lower level players are left with the options of stand around and wait, or go up and hit the mobs for 20 damage and risk getting one shot because of the level discrepancy. In a recent hotfix, they improved the experience given from individual mobs, but it will still take time to see if it will encourage that style of gameplay, or if the community is already too ingrained with sticking to fate trains. I'm hoping for the former, but only time will tell. Pro: it's chill, laid-back content. There's no restraint on progressions like dungeons or 24-mans as in the light or dungeon atma steps. You can enter when you want and leave when you want. No penalties, no rush. It's great for socializing with friends while progressing with your relic. You don't have to focus on much and you're still able to progress at a good pace. The same thing is boring for some people, especially those without a large pool of friends or people playing at the same time, but the opportunity is there for those who play this MMO socially regardless. I would personally even take this grind for general leveling over running dungeons countless times. Con: mindlessly killing mobs can get repetitive. I believe the combat system in general is to blame, since spamming the same rotation over and over can get dull even in high level content. It can also be argued that killing the same mobs, adds, and bosses through spamming dungeons over and over is also mindless and repetitive. If you don't like this style of grind, it will definitely be more of a chore for you if you still decide to go for it. Pro: it's immersive. You're in constant peril of your surroundings in the untamed wilds, as they were advertised. You can't just steamroll over everything, and there's a sense of risk to adventuring from where you are to the next area. You are no longer the untouchable warrior of light you've more or less been throughout the rest of the story. Except for Xenos. He can touch us. He can touch us all day. It makes party play feel more like party play. You need to rely on your teammates to fulfill their roles in content that isn't a scripted instance fight. Con: notorious monster and party visibility priority needs to be adjusted. The instance doesn't seem to be optimized very well for the number of people allowed in. I personally appreciate the feeling of adventuring with so many other players in the same area, but it really rips you out of the action when the game turns into a slideshow in high-profile fates or areas, or the fate boss just flat out disappears from in front of you. I have no problem being able to see dead bodies in the area, I want to help them get back up, but I'd like to focus on my party and the boss first and foremost, which is currently a struggle when they periodically phase in and out of existence. Pro: it promotes community cooperation. It's a great feeling when you can go into a situation you're struggling with, ask for help, and not get bombarded with
Get good. Figure it out yourself.
and so on. The content doesn't hold your hand in either the quest locations or when you fall in combat. Everyone can empathize with the struggle, and most seem to want to help others avoid struggling more than they would want to themselves. This has already caused a system of support and camaraderie in the content that hasn't been nearly as prevalent or needed before. It's not too hard to figure things out yourself or even play solo, but getting help can affect your progress immensely by shaving hours off your grind or search time, and I personally feel it's balanced well here. I'm not saying there's a problem having solo content in an MMO, but you shouldn't get bent out of shape when a social game asks you to be social. I will note, however, that there is currently no way to sync down to your friend's level as you were able to do in Final Fantasy XI, which makes helping your low-level friends fairly inefficient if you're not ferrying them around to fates, which isn't ideal, but still effective. Con: Rewards outside of relic items are lackluster. You can only go through so much glamour before it's all repeated. Being able to sell or trade these lockbox specific items would help, as well as more relic item, materia, or guild rewards. Keep fate drops minus minions untradeable. The number of people willing to keep playing and helping new players will dwindle once they have no more reason to be there. That's the case in many forms of content, but at the moment you go through the potential rewards very quickly and player retention may suffer for it. Since I began working on this video, they have implemented certain changes that do alleviate some of these problems in a hotfix. I believe it's a step in the right direction, but for now we'll have to sit tight and see if it's a long-term fix or if they'll need to do something else in the future. Off the top of my head, I can suggest Eureka specific materials for armor or weapon glamour, housing items, and so on from fates or mobs as potential drops, and allow them to be market sellable or tradable. Glamour and monetary incentives have gone over well in my experience, but I'd like to hear more from you guys down below regarding what you'd like to see as well. Pro. It pays homage to Final Fantasy XI and the first-gen style of MMO gaming. As I said before, having this style of grind and exploration is refreshing in a game that has only offered dungeons as a means of progression, especially for those like myself who grew up on the prior. It gets mad nostalgia points, and while we play Final Fantasy XIV for what it brings in the modern era rather than just playing Final Fantasy XI outright, it's nice to have a nod to that older style of gaming without having to boot up an entirely different game. There's very little handholding in regards to quest markers and guidance. It relies on and promotes community cooperation. I've touched on this before, but I feel like it's worth mentioning again. So far, there's been no shortage of people willing to share information or even go out of their way to escort or raise people in more dangerous parts of the map. Con. It pays homage to Final Fantasy XI and a first-gen style of gaming. Final Fantasy XI was not exactly consumer-friendly or casual-friendly. This doesn't mean anti-consumer, but it was a niche market for people who enjoyed that style of limited help adventure and open world grind, which will miss the mark on a lot of other players that don't see the appeal of this archaic style. If you're not hit by nostalgia to get you into it, it might be hard to acclimate. Pro. It's optional. The relic gear and weapons are good, but not always the best and not mandatory by any means, though some tome weapon stats are horrible for the jobs they're meant for. While the item level is still further behind than previous steps in prior comparable patches, the addition of 5 guaranteed meld slots are a nice touch and permit a nice level of customization that isn't the nightmare of the Nova step. Con. It's optional, but a relic step. People who don't want to do this step may feel compelled to do it anyway just to not be left behind at the risk of missing out on a potentially amazing weapon later down the line. The development team has dropped the ball a number of times when doling out poor stats to some jobs' tome weapons that are terrible by comparison to others. Warrior and Summoner, to name a couple. Some are hardly worth the effort or tomes for the minimal increase they bring from the previous patch. I'm not saying the dev team should make tome weapons the best weapons. I personally feel that raid weapons should be the best available for the amount of time and effort they're required to achieve. For progression, however, tome weapons can be, and arguably should be, very useful. At least giving one optimal stat would make them worth the time and make relic more of an alternative option rather than an outright improvement. If the subsets are in fact able to outweigh the weapon damage, which they might, but I'm not a weapon weight theory crafter, so... All in all, there are arguments to be made on both sides. If you like laid-back, open-world content you can grind with friends, a sense of peril, and limited assistance and progression, Eureka might be right up your alley. If you prefer dungeons or other instance combat grinding, content you can do more or less on your own or at least with limited interaction with other players, Eureka will most likely not resonate with you. Whichever side you land on, we can work together to provide feedback in hopes the content will improve and even broaden our own horizons through discussion with each other. It can also lead to future relic steps being less controversial and more generally accepted by the Final Fantasy XIV player base. So what do you think of Eureka? Do you enjoy it? Do you hate it? Is it meh? What can be changed or what did you wish it had been? Keep in mind, of course, that this is the first step in a new series of relic questlines. Even if this didn't satisfy you, they probably spent most of the development time creating other areas for the future steps. It's also meant to be an experiment, which means it's not perfected yet and there's a chance of failure. That doesn't mean we can't pick apart what we have in front of us now, but it's good to remember that we don't have the full picture yet and we'll have to wait and see how it all ties together in the end. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to what they have in store for us. That being said, thank you for hanging out. I've been Drak, and I'll see you next time. Alright, let's see what's new on the interwebs today. Wonder what Larry's been up to. Oh, he's talking about Eureka too. Let's just check this out.
Hey guys, here I am with the Panini Notorious Monster. As you can see, we have the level 6 lambs here for the slaughter. And there we go. They're dead on the ground. I don't know. This boss is pretty easy. You know, this is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy IV. But you don't gotta worry about that. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. This is truly the Dark Souls of Final Fantasy. But you don't gotta worry